All right, welcome back, class. We are continuing our lecture series here for World History 1 at the College of Mid-America, and we are going to be looking at India today, and the next lecture we'll be looking at India. Today's lecture we're going to be looking at the beginning civilizations of India. Again, this is kind of an overview of the civilization, and next lecture will be an overview of the beginnings for their religion, which leads into Hinduism. This is not a lecture course on the religion of India or religions in general. We're just going to touch on some of the main points of their religion, and then that'll be it pretty much for India. So today we're going to be looking at the early civilizations that developed along the Indus River, and then how it kind of spread out into India. So hang on tight. We're going to move into our PowerPoint. The History of India, Part 1. As I said, we will be doing two lessons on India. Again, just getting a brief overview of the early civilization history of India. The first thing we need to talk about with the beginning of India is the earliest civilization that existed there, called the Hereupon Civilization. This was an early Indian society that began to settle along the Indus River, which is one of the main rivers in India. As you can see there on the map on the screen, there was really only one way into India, the India subcontinent there, and that was south of the Hindu Kush mountain range, and then a second mountain range called the Himalayas, which I'm sure you are very familiar with. The Himalayas, the Himalayan mountain range is the tallest mountain range in the world. Mount Everest is there, so that's where the tallest peaks are, is in the Himalayas. But these two mountain ranges kept groups from coming from the direct north, and so they came in from the northwest. And you can see that red arrow is where they came across, which is modern-day Pakistan. And they crossed over there. Well, you can see the Indus River Valley and where the Hereupon settled there along the Indus River. The source of the Indus River comes from the Himalayan mountains and the Hindu Kush mountains, from the melting snow and the rivers that flow into the main rivers and into the Indus River. So you can see in that kind of pink shaded area, that is where the valley civilization began, and they settled there because of the rivers and the soil deposits from the rivers was good for agriculture. So this is what we call silt. Silt was left when the rivers receded, and it was good for agriculture. They were able to grow crops, much like we looked at in Egypt with the Nile and the flooding of the Nile. They were able to grow, and then also when we looked at Mesopotamia, the same way, these civilizations began along these rivers because they could grow crops. But unfortunately, that's bad for archaeology, because when you have early civilizations that are right on rivers, a lot of times the artifacts or the archaeological evidence is lost because of it's just being washed away or eroded away. So it's not very good for archaeology. So what we have here for the Hereupon civilization is the earliest archaeological artifacts date to about 2500 BC, somewhere around there. Again, not hard, firm dates, but somewhere around there is where they look at the earliest artifacts of the Hereupon civilization, which was the first one into the India subcontinent. Okay, let's look at their civilization. In regards to a government structure, there's very little evidence of any kind of government structure juxtaposed to Egyptian rulers that had a vast structure to the government system, with Pharaoh being at the top, and then other nobility and a structure for governing the people. The Hereupon civilization, there was not much of a government going on. The population size required some type of organization. That's a typographical error on the screen there. Some type, not typer. Some type of organization. Because the archaeological digs that they do have, evidence they do have, there are housing sites that show a variety of house sizes. And so the poorest would live in the very small houses, the one-room house, while a larger house would be for someone of higher importance, maybe a government official or some sort of person that would rule. And this obviously would be based on the caste system that had developed. There was a primitive caste system. We'll talk about that in a second. So the rulers would have had larger dwellings, but in regards to government, there just didn't seem to be, there's not much evidence of a very structured government. Theories for the organization is probably due because of granaries, temples, weights and measures, and standardized brick sizes. These evidences show that there had to be somebody in charge to organize a granary where the grain would be collected to be distributed to the people. Or temples, obviously that has to do with some kind of structured religion. Weights and measures, somebody had to make that there was a standard for the weights and measures, and same thing with the brick sizes. There had to be someone in charge, a government or something like that, to have these standards. In regards to art, they do have some statues, some buildings that are basically the foundations. I have a picture coming up here in the slide. Pottery, figurines, some precious metals. So it is very primitive, but not much of evidence. Not much archaeological evidence remains. Okay, I'm not sure what's going on with that slide. We'll leave that. Technology, like I said, there's buildings. They had a grid pattern to their buildings and streets. They did have a public kind of sewage or waste disposal system, which would be basically a canal, narrow canals, ditches that would drain the sewage away. In regards to their religion, again, it's difficult to understand this primitive religion of the Hereupon Civilization because of its lack of evidence. They did focus their religion on fertility. They had a mother goddess and a horned fertility god that they worshiped. They worshiped trees and animals. And about 1500 BC, the Hereupon Civilization began to collapse because of some invading groups came in, and they just weren't able to last. They didn't completely disappear, but they collapsed as being the civilization. They were taken over by the next one, which we're going to look at here in a second. Okay, their economy. Again, I apologize for this slide situation. I'm not sure what happened there. They did have organized trade between, mostly the trade would be between villages and small cities along the Indus Valley. They would trade with one another. This wasn't vast trade across oceans or anything like that, like we looked at with the Phoenicians. Similarities with Mesopotamia and Egypt. I don't know what's going on with these slides. We have a picture real quick of the picture is going to come up and go and disappear really quick. I'm having some real problems with these slides. That's some foundations of houses. Here we go. There they are. And they're gone. Okay. So the next civilization that we see here is the Indo-European civilization, which are called Aryans. And these are peoples that come across south of the the mountain ranges across it's called the Khyber Pass, which is the opening in the mountains, basically in modern-day Pakistan, that leads into India, kind of the Kashmir region of India of today. But these Indo-Europeans came in around 1500, entered the India subcontinent. And you can see in your book on page 77, there's a map of the Hereupon society, and there's some arrows there on the map that show how people came into the subcontinent. So around 1500 BC, the Aryans came in, and when you hear Aryans, don't think like all of a sudden it's people from Western Europe, all like white people. These are people that they came across basically from the Iranian plateau. They came across the Middle Eastern people groups. They came across that way. And what happened is they came in and they clashed with groups that were in India that had settled in India already. Other groups that had, small groups that came in and they settled with the Hereupon people and intermarried with them, and they lived in the Indus River Valley. And these groups were called Dravidians. And the Aryans came in and clashed with the Dravidians, and they would battle. They would fight each other. But over time, they settled, and they actually began to intermarry with the Dravidians there in the India subcontinent. The civilization began to become established, and there's actually the earliest evidence of writing of the Indo-Europeans is called the Vedas, and this is a collection of songs, prayers, and rituals honoring their gods. So this is the Aryan peoples. Their villages, their cities, their chiefdoms developed a kind of a local government structure, and these small areas, whether it be a village or a chiefdom, were led by a local king called a Raja. You may be familiar with that term, a Raja. Around 750 to 500 BC, there was a serious population increase in the India subcontinent. It really began to spread out into the India subcontinent. And this is because of a big increase in immigration through the area, breaking the mountains in Pakistan. And the people just really began to spread out. I'm just looking through some notes here that the Aryans, when they came in and they battled the Dravidians and they intermarried with one another, it actually began to lay the social and cultural foundations that impact the India society today. So this is the time when India began to become established as although there's a lot of different people groups within India and areas within India, languages within India, it really began to settle into the Indian subcontinent of what we would consider it today. Okay, so there were two gifts, if you want to look at it that way. I put it in quotes that way. Two gifts of the Indo-European invasion. Aryans that came across through Pakistan and settled in. They fought the Dravidians. They intermarried. They established the social and cultural foundations of what we think of India today. Basically, it was religion and the caste system. Those were the two gifts of the Indo-European invasion. So let's look at the caste system. At the beginning of it, the social class was of heredity, which you would think of, that makes sense, but it was unchangeable because their class system was based on Varna, which is color. So the people couldn't change their color. So they were basically born into their caste, and their caste was based on color. That was the early caste system, but that changed over time to more of a structured class system based on group. So over time, there were 5 main Varnas. Now it's considered groups, not colors. So 5 main Varnas. And on the screen there, you see the breakdown of the Varnas. We have the Brahmins, which you may have heard of. These were the priests and the scholars. The next is that's actually pronounced Kshatriyas. Okay, the Kshatriyas are warriors and the wealthy. The next is the Vaishyus. Okay, where it says merchants, that's actually pronounced Vaishyus. Then there's the peasants and serfs, which were the Shudras. And then you can see the very last group were the pariah, or the untouchables, because they were polluted. So you can see this breakdown here of the 5 main groups. Now, these groups, there was the ability to have some limited caste movement. Okay, so really, if a merchant became very wealthy, they could move up in caste. But what's interesting in regards to the caste system in relation to religion is that you add the caste system with religion and it gives the authority. Notice who's on top, the priests, and then second is the wealthy. They have power and authority over the people. And another interesting point in their religion is only the top 3 groups could attain nirvana, which was like their heaven. So if you were a pariah or a shudra, you were out of luck. Only the top 3 could attain nirvana here during this time. The pariah, the last group there, the untouchables, had no chance of attaining nirvana. And the reason that they were considered the untouchables was because they were, first off, they were outside of the caste system, if you want to think of it that way. You had the Brahmins and the Shudras, they were within the caste system, but the pariah, they weren't even looked at as being part of the caste system. They were just there in the lowest of the low, and they were the ones that performed the most unpleasant tasks in society, such as they were the ones that butchered animals that they would eat, and touching the dead, handling of dead bodies, the dead people. They would be the ones that touched the dead bodies, and they were basically polluted because of their work. And if they were able to move up in caste, the belief was that they would pollute the caste grouping that they moved into. So what the caste system did was they just basically took the pariah and left them out of the caste system. There was no opportunity to move up and pollute any higher caste. Okay, class, that's it for this first lecture on the history of India. We covered the early civilizations of India and look at their caste system. And next lecture we'll be picking up and looking at the religious system, kind of based on the caste system, with in regards to who could continue on with nirvana and becoming one with the consciousness, the universal consciousness. So next lecture we're going to be focusing in on that. Okay, have a great day.